Former Vice President and 2020 presidential candidate Joe Biden wrapped up the first day of a two-day swing through Iowa with a speech in Davenport, Iowa.
So many old friends, and Jim is a great, great friend and been for a long, long time. And your former mayor, Bill, are you here, Bill? All right, man, okay. And Roxanne Moore, is it Roxanne? I love you, kid. Good to see you. Great to see old friends. You know, that old expression, God made man, and then he made some firefighters. Thank God they are crazy. They're the only people I know who run into fires. But on a personal note, I've said this before to them in Washington and other places, and they've endorsed me, which I really appreciate, but I owe them because the firefighters literally, not figuratively, saved my life. I had 2 cranial aneurysms. They gave me about a 30% chance of living. They got me down to Walter Reed to a neurosurgeon for a 13-hour operation in the middle of a snowstorm. Saved my life. When my wife and daughter were killed, where so many of you were so empathetic and nice to me after I got elected first time, the jaws of life freed my 2 boys. My wife was Christmas shopping and lost my wife and daughter for the jaws of life and got them to the hospital in time to save them. And then I was down doing Meet the Press one day, and lightning struck my home, and they went in, and the floor was, anyway, it was terrible, but they got my wife out, and most importantly to her, they saved our cat. So it's great to be back. It really is great to be back here. And you know, Donald Trump and I are both in town today, or at least in the state today. Wasn't planned that way, but I hope Trump's presence here is maybe a clarifying moment for us all. American farmers have been crushed by his tariff war with China, and no one knows that better than the folks of Iowa. You know, he thinks that he's being tough. Well, it's easy to be tough when someone else is feeling the pain and taking the hit. How many farmers across this state and across the nation have had to face the prospects of losing their business, losing their farm because of these Trump tariffs? How many times have they gone to bed staring, I mean literally staring at the ceiling, wondering what's going to happen tomorrow, wondering where they're going to make it? And how about manufacturing? Trump's tariffs and trade wars are hitting a lot of American manufacturing, especially the American automobile industry, choking it within an inch of its life. You know, one of my proudest moments, and I know I got blamed for pushing for the bailout of General Motors and the automobile industry, one of my proudest moments was when President Obama and I led the rescue of the American auto industry. We knew that it meant millions of jobs in the automobile companies and the supply chains. We also knew that it meant the pride of the nation was at stake as well. Now, watching Trump destroy the industry that President Obama helped save is discouraging. You know, I don't think the president really gets the basics. He thinks these tariffs are being paid by China, just like he thinks Mexico's building a wall. He's an amazing guy, isn't he? Joe, be kind. I keep thinking of my mother. Anyway, while Trump is tweeting, China is making massive investments in new technologies, in artificial intelligence, in 5G. They're going to, while he's tweeting, they're not sitting still. No other country is. They're moving. While he's name calling, China is building roads and bridges and high-speed rail. Trump is pursuing this damaging and erratic war on trade without any real strategy. That's the part that concerns me the most. China is positioning itself to lead the world in renewable energy while it's exporting. I mean, it's just bizarre. While Trump's attacking our friends, China's pressing their advantage all over the world. We need the rest of the world to deal with us dealing with China and their cheating and what they're doing in the western part of their country and the eastern part of their country and what they're doing to the Uyghurs. But nothing's said. And so you bet I'm worried about China if we keep following the path that President Trump has us on. The point I've been making for years, if we do what we need to do here at home, if we stand up for America's interest, if we invest in our people, our lives, our values, the work of our partners, we can outcompete anybody in the world. Nobody else can compete with us. No, we really can. That's not hyperbole. We really can. I have absolute confidence in the productivity of American workers. They're 3 times as productive as workers in Asia. Our ingenuity and our great research universities. We have more great research universities in America than all the rest of the world combined, literally. And here we are. Every major new initiative that's changed the world has come out of those universities. You own them. We own them. Los Alamos, all those places, those great labs we think are somehow a government entity, they are owned by the people of the states in which they are located. And we should own the 21st century. So when it comes to taking on China first, let's invest in America. That's why I proposed historic initiatives in scientific research, cutting-edge infrastructure, modern workforce that's going to help American workers and entrepreneurs compete. And guess what? If we build these infrastructures, we make this investment, we're going to create millions of good paying jobs. It's not inconsistent with who we are. Secondly, we have to, no, I really mean it, think of what we can do. Second, let's build a united front of our allies to challenge Chinese abusive behavior. Trump is attacking the very partners we need to help deal with China. We need to rally half the world's economy to hold China accountable for their cheating and get the chorus of voices speaking out on China's repression. But what's happening? We're alienating all those allies in Asia. What are we doing? It makes no sense. And look, let's tighten up our defenses so that American companies don't have to keep getting and giving away technology to China and having it stolen. That's what's happening now. Trade doesn't do that. In the Obama-Biden administration, we got China to cut cyber theft. It's gotten significantly worse under this administration. We should say to China what I said to Xi Jinping. Look, real simple. When they said they set them an air identification zone that no one could fly through in the South China Sea, I said, we're not going to pay attention to it. He said, what do you expect me to do, take it down? I said, no, I'm not going to do anything. We're going to fly through it. We flew B-52s through it. That's it. We're not listening. You want to steal our property? You say you have to have American companies have half ownership in China and access to all the intellectual property? Well, guess what? Play the same game, man. You can't trade here unless you do the same, instead of setting tariffs on what we're doing with farmers and with businesses. Finally, we have to find a way to cooperate where we have a common interest. The Chinese agreed for the first time to limit their carbon pollution. We got them to join the Paris Peace Accord. The Paris Climate Accord. And what did we do? We stepped away. My Lord. And you all know there's no such thing as climate change. I know that here in Davenport. Look, there's a lot more we can do on climate change and nuclear weapons and issues where there's a common interest. But time and time again, on issue after issue, Trump makes the wrong choices. And he's motivated by the wrong things. His denial of a climate crisis, his ignorance of the devastating long-term impacts of tariffs that were going to bankrupt the Farm Belt. Look, folks, we're seeing devastating floods, I need not tell you, hitting farms and communities all across the heartland, right here in Davenport. I was supposed to be here several months ago, and I canceled because you had this god-awful flood again. We've gone through it, flooded streets, disruptive lives and businesses. Farmers all across can't plant their fields, record flood levels, millions of dollars in damage and cleanup. The economic devastation of the heartland will be record-breaking, even with government funding support for farmers, and farmers are not alone. The economy of our cities and our small town relies on being able to sell the crops around the world. Look, folks, and still, what is President Trump? He denies there's climate change. What did he tell Piers Morgan in an interview recently? He said, well, weather goes both ways. I don't know what he does, but weather does go both ways. Reminds me when he tweeted in the winter, he tweeted in the winter that since it was cold outside, there is no such thing as climate change. As my mother would say, bless me, Father, for I have sinned. What? I mean, what? And how about when he said, no, catch this one. I went out and looked at those devastating fires in California with your colleagues all across the West. Devastated. Millions of people put in harm's way. And what did he say? He said, those California fires, what they got to do is rake their leaves. I'm not joking. I'm not making this up. You know, this would be material a stand-up comic could use if it weren't so true. Look. And, you know, if it wasn't so serious, it'd be just another rich guy living in a gold-plated apartment in Manhattan tweeting about those pointy-headed scientists that don't know anything. It wouldn't matter. But he's the president. You know, well, look, we need to do everything in our power to confront this climate change. I've laid out a detailed plan I will not bore you with right now, but you can go on joebiden.com climate/climate and see it. Instead of a president who gives 2.6 million gallons worth of waivers to let Exxon and Chevron refineries get out of using renewable fuels, we need a president who's going to partner with farmers and ranchers, give them the certainty to expand the market for ethanol and the next generation of biofuels. We need to be investing in clean energy innovation, building clean energy infrastructure for a nationwide network of charging stations all across America, and for a 21st century railroad system. What are we doing? No, I mean, think about it. I mean, it's like, it's putting America on a course to becoming net zero emissions and clean energy economy by 2050. It's within our power to do these things. Instead, Trump pulled America out of the Paris Agreement on climate, and he just tried to muzzle the State Department analysts to prevent him from discussing climate science before the Congress. And by the way, he thinks windmills cause cancer. Now look, you think I'm making this up? I know. On April the 2nd, he said, quote, if you have a windmill near your house, congratulations, your house just went down 75% in value, and they say the noise causes cancer. Look, we know about cancer, a lot of us. How many of you have lost someone to cancer or someone you love? What did he do? We got an act passed after he got elected, with Republicans and Democrats joining together to add over $8 billion for research at NIH, $1.8 billion in a climate for dealing with cancer in itself, named after my son. First thing he did, first budget he proposed was to cut $10 billion. Folks, imagine what we could do if we invested half of that cockamamie tax cut he gave, even a tenth of it, in scientific research to deal with what's happening with cancer, ended as we know it, Alzheimer's, dealing with obesity, dealing with what's happening. God Almighty, it's all within our power. Remember when Trump's Justice Department, speaking of health, when Trump's Justice Department decided to argue that the Affordable Care Act is in its entirety unconstitutional just a few months ago? Well, by the way, pause for a second. I went into 22 states campaigning for over 60 Democrats running for the House, the Senate, governor, state legislative bodies. And guess what? I didn't hear any of them talking about being against Republicans, being against health care. All of a sudden, they had an altar call. They saw the Lord. They saw the Lord. He appeared before them. Not much. Think about it. Think about it. All of a sudden, everybody was for dealing with the Affordable Care Act. Now he barely mentions the fact that he wants to gut it and get rid of it. He doesn't even tweet about it anymore. He knows the appearance will give the American people give him the same thrashing that they gave the Republicans in 2018 for trying to get rid of the Health Care Act. Folks, guess what? If I become this party's nominee, I'm not going to let the American people forget at all. Donald Trump is trying to take away your protections for pre-existing conditions. I'm not going to let the American people forget the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act, that their kid gets to stay in their parents' plan till they're age 26 if they can't afford it. I'm not going to let the American people forget that it's because of the Affordable Care Act that millions of people have gained health care. Folks, and more than one thing. One more thing. What amazes me is this president actually thinks that Wall Street and the super rich built this country. They didn't. The middle class built this country. Ordinary hard work, not a joke. Not a joke. The American people given a half a chance have never, ever, 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 ever let their country down. Not once. All they ask for is a shot. Just a shot. Folks, it's the work, and I know I'm called middle class Joe. I'm always talking about middle class. Well, I'll tell you what. I know who built the country. I know one more thing. With a growing middle class, we have economic, political, and social stability. While every other country goes through a crisis because they don't have the kind of middle class we had, things begin to fray. But for the first time, we no longer have the wealthiest middle class in America. And the middle class is shrinking in America. You have people out there now, many of you know them and maybe some of you. If you got a bill for $400 that you didn't anticipate in a month, you wouldn't know how to pay it. My dad used to say, Joey, remember, when we moved from Scranton, if you listen to Barack, you'd think I climbed out of a coal mine with a lunch bucket in my hand. But we had to move from Scranton because no work. And by the way, Trump went up in Scranton, where I'm relatively in good shape, and said, by the way, he abandoned you. I was 9 years old. I left with my dad. I'm so sorry I didn't stay. But I went home every summer. I went back for Christmas and Easter. I tried. Yo. I mean, I shouldn't get started. And look, the tax cut he passed for multimillionaires and billionaires. Guess what? When I'm president, it's gone. It's gone. I don't want to punish anybody. Folks, we need a fairer tax code. You realize when Reagan was president, there were about $800 billion they call tax expenditures, meaning things we don't collect taxes on. Not tax cuts, tax expenditures, loopholes. Well, guess what? You know what it is today? $1.4 trillion. You can't find me an economist anywhere in this state that will tell you there's justification socially, politically, or in any economic reason for at least $500 billion of that money. Imagine what we could do. We don't have to hurt anybody by eliminating. We don't have to punish anybody, including the rich. But everybody should start paying their fair share a little bit. When I'm president, we're going to have a fairer tax code, and we're going to invest in people. We're going to invest in economy. We're going to invest in things that make America grow. We're going to get rid of the $100 billion in tax loopholes. With no rationale. I'm going to build an economy that doesn't just reward wealth, but build an economy that rewards work. Think about it. Think about it. Look, I have nothing against the wealthy, but they don't need it. They know they don't need another tax break. They know it. We're going to build an economy that works for everyone, an economy that, in fact, restores the dignity of work. And how can you, as a person busting your neck out there in your jobs, how can you have dignity if you can't provide for the basics for your family, for health care, for education, for just a little bit of breathing room? Just a little bit of breathing room. My dad used to say, middle class is a simple thing. It's about being able to own your own home and not have to rent it. It's being able to send your kid to a local school that's good enough that they did well, they can go on to school after high school, whether it's trade school, whether it's community college, whether it's 4 years of college. You know, right now, 65 out of every 100 jobs today require something beyond a high school degree. You know, the fact is, I've said it many times, that we can overcome 4 years of this presidency. It'll go down in history as an aberration. No, I really mean it. I think we can overcome it. A lot of damage has been done. It's going to take a lot of hard work. But ladies and gentlemen, if he's in the White House for 8 years, he's going to forever change and fundamentally alter the character of this nation. I really mean it. This is beyond the issues. I believe that Trump poses a fundamental threat to America. First, to our core values, what we stand for, who we are, what we believe. You know, we saw it in Charlottesville. I never thought I'd see that coming as a kid out of the civil rights movement. I never thought I'd see that. Neo-Nazis climbing out of fields with lighted torches. You saw it, contorted faces, filled with hate, chanting the same anti-Semitic bile, carrying Nazi flag. Well, that's okay. Be nice. This is not a Trump rally. Look. And when these folks are accompanied by white supremacists, as well as by the Ku Klux Klan, and there was a clash with decent people, the courage to stand up against hate, what happened? They asked the president what he thought. He said, there were some very fine people in both groups. Not a joke. That's what he said. That's what he said. And ladies and gentlemen, look, later when he realized when I said that he was getting some heat, he said, well, no, those people were just going to march to protect a statue, a Confederate statue. Look, he's yet to acknowledge and apologize for what he said. And it's gone around the world. And our children are listening. Silence is complicity. Look at what's happening. Look, and when we see at the border his policies of ripping kids from their mothers and fathers and putting them literally in the equivalent of cages, thousands of them. What does that say? What does that say to the world? Who we are? Folks, look. The phrase, we hold these truths self-evident, all men and women, all are created equal. It's an American creed. It's who we are. It's what we've been. We haven't always lived up to it, but we've never fully abandoned it. We have never stopped trying to create a more perfect union. It's the American creed, but Trump doesn't see it that way. He thinks when we talk that way, it makes us weak. He has no idea, in my view, what makes us strong. What makes us strong as a nation is our honesty, our decency, treating everyone with some dignity. I really mean it. Demonizing no one. Demonizing no one, not the poor, not the Muslim, not the powerless, not the immigrant, the other. We give in this country hate no safe harbor. But now it's been given some credibility. People are coming out from under the rocks and saying things and doing things that never would be accepted before. It's a small percentage of people, but it's real. And again, not a joke. Our children are watching. Our children are listening. Look, understanding that Americans, we're part of something bigger than ourselves. We always understand that. We've always known that. Does anyone in this room think Donald Trump understands that? Okay? Look, everywhere we turn, it's clear that Donald Trump is shredding what we most believe. We believe we have to restore, I believe we have to restore the basic values we stand for. We're not the most, we've led not by just the example of our power, but the power of our example. That's why the rest of the world has come to us. That's why so many people have flocked here. That's why America's an idea, the most unique idea in all of history, not a joke. The most unique idea in all of history. And it's being damaged around the world. Second, our standing in the world. Trump just attended the 75th anniversary of D-Day, the most important symbol in the world of the importance of American alliances. It was after that war that many of your fathers and mothers and others and grandparents gave their lives. And what happened afterwards? We decided that we were no longer going to allow for the abuse of power of any one nation. So that's when we formed NATO. So no one nation could act independently to abuse their power like it happened before throughout history in Europe, at least 2 times in that century. And, what has Donald Trump done? Donald Trump has said a few words about NATO this time, but they're completely at odds with everything else he has done and said for years, including an interview he gave with Fox News just before he made his speech. He remains the only American president ever since World War II to threaten to leave NATO. Talked about the obsolescence of it. Talked about the need for the same reason, the whole rationale for the European Union was to now allow one nation to be able to dominate that region. But what's happened? They're the enemy. They're the enemy. Did he do anything to signal he's prepared to walk away from the thugs and dictators he's embraced on the world stage? Standing before the international community, the G8, and turning to a dictator like Putin and saying, I believe him rather than all of our intelligence agencies? No, by the way, not only is it unbelievable, but think what it does to our allies who, in fact, share information with our intelligence communities. If the President of the United States says, I don't believe them, my Lord, it jeopardizes our security, not a joke. And he embraces Kim Jong-un, who is a damn thug and a murderer. This is the guy who had his uncle's brains blown out. His brother, no, I'm not joking. And by the way, I was pleased to know that his alliance with Kim Jong-un, he and Kim Jong-un thought that maybe I shouldn't be president. Well, that's a... By the way, he quoted him. He quoted Kim Jong-un while he was there. Okay, all right. Whoa. He didn't do any of the right things. Instead, he gets up in the middle of the night while he's at Normandy, and he tweets an attack on Bette Midler, the mayor of London, because he's Muslim, the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, who's there with him in Normandy. A stunning display of childlessness that the whole world watched. But again, it wasn't just world leaders who were watching, it was all of our friends around the world listening to what he was saying. Look, the behavior, the character of a president matters a lot. It matters what presidents say. And to be excused, we used to say in the Senate, a point of personal privilege, I want to say something we don't say often enough to our party or to our nation. Barack Obama was a president of extraordinary character and decency. Extraordinary. He was the president our children could and did look up to. How many of you know people yourself who have turned off the television sometimes when he speaks? No, I'm not joking. I know I missed the dinner that was here, or not long ago, I guess it was last Sunday, because my granddaughter was graduating from high school. And her best friend is Sasha Obama. Afterward, no, they've been to school together for the whole time. So Barack and I and Jill and the whole family, we got together afterwards to have a little light lunch and dinner for the families that all these girls grew up together with. And I watch how they look. They know who this man was. I was proud to work with him. I was proud of the work we did together from the Recovery Act, which kept us from going into a depression, in my view, and a lot of economists. The Recovery Act. The auto rescue. Health care. But I'm most proud of the man he was and is. Ladies and gentlemen, he was speaking, and I was out in California speaking at the same time. We were at different places around the country. And we were both asked, coincidentally, what we were most proud of in the administration. And it turns out we said the same thing, slightly different way. Now I was most proud of, for 8 years, there wasn't one single hint of a scandal or a lie. Not one. And if you didn't instinctively miss him, Trump sure reminds us of why we need him back, somebody like him. Look, Donald Trump, the President of the United States, just spent Saturday night attacking private citizens using language like little Donny Deutsch or total loser. Barack Obama wouldn't do that. No president would do that. Most teenagers wouldn't do that. Look, yeah, well, you know, he's setting a standard of crude language and embarrassing behavior that is burrowing deep into our culture, for real, into our culture. And it's going to take some time to get rid of it, but we must. We must. It's not who we are. And folks, thirdly, our democracy. Our democracy is at risk. I never thought I'd use those words in my lifetime, but it's true. Everywhere you turn, Trump is tearing down the guardrails of democracy, tearing down the things that prevent the abuse of power. Whether it's a man raising his hand to strike a woman or a child, or an employer threatening workers and treating them like dirt, or an American president who has no respect for the rule of law, I can't stand it, and most Americans can't stand the abuse of power. Fake news, enemy of the people. These aren't words to be laughed at or dismissed. Just look what's happening around the world. Think of the dictators and tyrants using the exact same language Trump uses to justify their abuses of power in their countries. Not a joke. Think about it. Trump's goal is simple: discredit the news, discredit the free press, and run over the American people in terms of their safeguards roughshod. His attacks on the independence of the courts, whether it's saying when a judge with Mexican ancestry wouldn't give him a fair hearing when he disagreed with him because of Mexican heritage. Or Obama judges. They're bad because, quote, he's looking to tear down the constraints the courts have put on him. The only remaining constraints. It's gone beyond attacks on the full range of law enforcement agencies, from the FBI to the intelligence community. Think about this. Name me another president. Look, I presided over both of those organizations as the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee and as doing major intelligence responsibilities for the President of the United States. He absolutely abuses them. They made mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. But my Lord, treating them like they're the enemy of the people, the deep state. My Lord, the deep state. It's like out of a science fiction novel. As well as, by the way, attacking the Congress, whether it's Democrat or Republican. He doesn't care. It's about breaking down the barriers that constrain his power. He's deliberately and completely ignoring the legitimacy of the Congress. And he's doing it with full complicity of the Republicans in Congress who know better. They know better. They know it's wrong. Look, in 2020, we not only have to repudiate Donald Trump's policies and values, we have to clearly and fully reject, for our own safety's sake, his view of the presidency. Quote, "I have complete power." No, you don't, Donald Trump. Quote from Donald Trump, "I have absolute power." No, you don't, Donald Trump. Or, "Only I can fix it." Fix yourself first, Donald Trump. What? When has the president ever used those phrases? In the middle of a war, no president has used those phrases. We're at a moment we need to reset the constitutional norms of this country. The presidency is not without limits. The Congress is the co-equal branch of the government. The way our system is supposed to work, built by our founders, has allowed us to have the most successful democracy in the history of the world. And we're going to rue the day if we decide to walk away from the fundamentals of this democracy. For all our problems, folks. I'm optimistic. If I get elected, when I was 29 years old, I got elected to the United States Senate. I wasn't old enough to be sworn in. And I don't come from any material background. And Richard Nixon was running in Delaware and got over 64% of the vote. I won by a landslide of 3,100 votes, mainly because of firefighters. But folks, I was labeled the young optimist and the idealist. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm more optimistic about America's possibilities today than I was then. But none of it can happen if he is still there. Look. Think about this. If you can think about a different presidency, not even me, just a different presidency, we're better positioned than any nation in the world to lead the 21st century. We have the strongest military in the history of the world. We lead by our example. North America is energy independent. The U.S. has the best research universities in all the world. We have the most innovative people in the world. Our workers are 3 times as productive as workers in Asia. That's a fact. No other nation can match us. The only thing that can tear America apart is America itself. This idea is so big, it's wider than any ocean. It's more powerful than any dictator or tyrant. It's bigger than anything. Only we can undo ourselves. So folks, look. Everybody knows who Donald Trump is. No, I'm not joking. Even the people who support him, they have no illusions about who he is and his character. They may choose him because he's benefiting them in ways that, in fact, are contrary to the basic norms. But here's what we have to do. We have to let them know who we Democrats are, what we stand for. We have to let them know that we choose hope over fear, unity over division, truth over lies, and science over fiction. It's time for us to pick our heads up. Remember who we are. This is the United States of America. There's not a single thing was beyond our capacity to do. Together. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.